Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Milk the Day podcast. For introductions, again, I always want to say, I wanted to start saying this at the beginning, just to remind everyone, the Milk the Day lifestyle and the purpose of this whole thing is to live every day to the fullest by striving to make a positive impact. That's the lifestyle. That's the point of this podcast. So this is my vehicle for attempting to share some value and make a positive impact through the entertainment and conversations that we have here. And ladies and gentlemen, I have a really great guest today, Charles Jazz Terrier.
Hello,
welcome
sir.
to the show, good sir.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, Charlie here, we met at work. I've been in Australia, 4 months now, and I haven't met a ton of people, but you were one of those people I met here that was just like, we had a lot in common, and just one of those people that you meet and you get to know and become quick friends. So this is going to be fun because we have a lot in common, and I want to chop it up.
Absolutely. Well, especially, I mean, you haven't met a lot of people, so I could just be a really bad one. But yeah. No, of course.
Yeah, but
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. I feel like you're one of those people that I'm just like, once I meet you and I start getting to know you, I'm like, it just feels like it just makes sense. Where there's certain people like, oh, fuck, yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, shit, we were supposed to meet for some reason.
Yeah, well, I had the same thing. I think it was funny. It was the first day I sort of walked in and I said, oh, hey, man, like, welcome to the madhouse. And you had no idea what you were in for, obviously.
Yeah.
But I guess at the same time, I think I said, oh, it's American. Oh, and immediately I was like, sports. And you're like, no, really? And I was like, oh, it's going to be hard to bond. But it wasn't. So there you go. It was very easy.
It is funny that as far as like stereotypes of like a guy, a dude, a man, like to be a guy, like a more like still a regularly masculine guy, and to not be into sports is like less common. And it is a common thing that guys bond over or whatever. So it is always interesting because that's one of the first go-to conversations when you're out of town or you're in a different country or whatever. Yeah. Like a lot of people who are, it's like, of course you're going to be like, oh, what fucking sports, what teams, who's your teams? Who do you like? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think it's funny when I was younger and I would say like, oh, what footy team do you go for? Footy being Australian rules football for those listening at home. But I'd say, oh, what footy team do you go for? And people would be like, oh, I don't really follow football, or I don't really follow sports. And when I was younger, I was like, what? Like that doesn't, how do you not, what do you do with your free time? You know, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And now, you know, I obviously like everyone, as you grow and you get older and everything, what I kind of learned for myself was, oh, it's quite normal. Like there's a lot of people out there that don't really follow sports and have other interests in their life. You know, I think for me, it's quite funny because I don't come from, I guess, a traditional sort of Australian family in that sense, you know. That's not to say it's a weird family. It's just more both my parents and really my extended family, my grandparents, etc., were all in the arts in some way, but they were in different fields. They were in kind of art dealing, painting, photography, design, art teaching, etc., all these sorts of things. I went down a different path. You know, I chose initially music, and then I found performing arts and acting. And really, when I look at it now, I look back at my whole life, I go, oh, I've always loved entertaining people and performing and movies and acting and all that stuff. But it was funny because I found sports without having someone around me going, you should love sports, you know? Come on, son, let's go kick a footy.
It was more of a natural find.
It was more of a thing for me where just I couldn't, really put pin the tail on the donkey for where it started. But for me, it was very much going, earliest memories, I think, when I got to school was like, I want to play football with everyone at lunch, and I didn't have a sports team, and I was trying to find one, and then eventually I found my sports team, and it's been like everyone would have, you know, you have your highs and your lows, and then you have your very long, extended, depressing periods of low, in my case, with my sports team. But
growing up in a city like Melbourne, where sports, especially the AFL, is so big.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like... Even if you weren't getting the influence from like your parents are really into sports and then that got you into it earlier in life, how are you not going to come across the social exposure of like your friends are into AFL from the, like early on probably, right?
Yeah, and I think as well, I mean, Melbourne is such an interesting city in that sense because it is essentially like Australian rules football is a national sport and for the most part is our national game. You know, I would say it's the most popular sport in Australia, you know, because yes, you could say rugby league, which is a different type of, it's a different sport altogether. It's rugby, but they call it football in certain states. That's a very popular sport, but that is mainly between New South Wales and Queensland. Yes, there are teams in other places, but it doesn't really have the same reach nationally, you know, whereas AFL is, there is a team pretty much in every state, or there will be soon with the introduction of a Tasmanian team, but they play games all over the country.
When's that supposed to happen?
That's coming in, I think, 2028. So it's you still go, it's three years away, but that is, I guess, the run up that the AFL needs in order to bring it in and not have it falter pretty much immediately. But I guess Melbourne is why I say Melbourne's so interesting is because 10 teams out of the 18 teams that are currently in the league are based in Melbourne because the sport of AFL started in Victoria and it grew out from there. So you have essentially
10 teams just within this city of Melbourne. That's right.
Well, technically 9. Geelong is the other one, but Geelong is basically Melbourne with an extension because so many people that support Geelong don't just live there, they live here. And what is different is when you go overseas, different countries, different cities, you will find if people that follow sport, they go, oh, I go for, you know, Rome, or I go for St. Louis, or I go for the Yankees because I grew up in New York, you know. In Melbourne, you don't come, you go, there's 10 teams in one city. It's very rare. You'll meet a lot of people that go for one team, like a Collingwood, a Carlton, etc. But the options are so diverse. You've got Collingwood, Carlton, Essendon, Geelong, Hawthorn, Richmond, North Melbourne, Melbourne, St Kilda, and the Bulldogs. That's 10. And they cover every part of the city, you know.
Right.
And so
it is so wild to think that like this is such a popular like professional league thing and you have teams by the neighborhood. Yeah.
Well, imagine, I mean, take Melbourne's a city of say 6 million people. Let's say if you did the same thing in New York, which is, what was it, 20 million, probably more. I mean, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but if they had as many teams, it would be like you would have a Bronx, a Queens, a Brooklyn, which they do.
Right.
You know, you would have, a Lower East Side, an Upper East Side, an Upper West Side, a Lower West Side, a Chelsea, a Midtown, you have all these teams.
Yeah. No, that's a fun way to put it.
Yeah, but as a result, I think sport is so endemic to Australian culture, for one, but especially Melbourne. Melbourne self-proclaims it, and it's largely gone unchallenged because we have so many events here, but it is the sporting capital of this country. We have, outside of AFL, you know, we have pretty much a team in every single professional sport in the country. We have the Australian Open here. We have the Formula One. We have MotoGP also that comes down to Phillip Island. Like, there are a lot of sports centered sort of cities. So if you are a sports fan, Melbourne is a great place to be. But it's such a funny thing as well, because if you go anywhere else in the country, you will find that same level of sports fanaticism. There'll just be less teams or less events.
That is interesting. And when I was researching Australia, different cities where me and my sister were going to move, and just talking to the few Australian friends I knew, getting advice on like where to go and why or whatever, and people always, if you bring up Melbourne and you talk about what's great about it, you talk about culture, you talk about sports, you talk about food, you talk about all these things. And it's always, so I knew, and it was funny, again, somebody who's not closely following sports, grew up playing sports. I do like sports. I just don't follow it. I like the bigger games once it's the playoffs or like the championship. And it's not something that, you know, the small amount of time that we end up having the bandwidth for adulting these days, I clearly just don't have a genuine interest enough to be reading about it and keeping up with it. But I do like a great sports game, and I do like sports. But yeah, it's just funny, you know, moving to the sports capital of Australia, and that's not the biggest thing for me, like it would be a lot of my friends who are just bigger into sports. But by the way, sidebar, netball.
Netball.
What is that?
Netball is
It's netball.
It's a very interesting sport.
Well, it's a basketball hoop without the basket.
Yeah.
Or with just the hoop.
No backboard.
No backboard. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for.
I mean, netball's an interesting sport. I don't know lots about the history of it, but essentially, it's what I do know about netball is I'm pretty sure it has the highest percentage of ACL and like knee injuries out of any professional sport because of the intense nature of it. It is a stop and go sport. You're not allowed to dribble. You're not allowed to run with the ball. You essentially have the ball. You can pivot on one foot. You can take one step and raise the other step or raise the other leg, but you can't move with the ball essentially. So you pass it to someone, they have to stop, which means there's a lot of fast moving.
And then there's keeping one leg planted and you're kind of pivoting around.
Jump, catch, moving the ball forward to the goal. Certain players are only allowed to go in certain parts of certain parts of the field, if you will, or the court. But it doesn't have a backboard as well. And I think it's similar to, I think it's about a 10-foot or a 3-meter high hoop as well, so it's similar to basketball in that sense. But yeah, it doesn't have a backboard, so it is very reliant on sharpshooting. And for the most part, you're only allowed to shoot within a deemed what they call like a goal circle, I think it is. So a lot of the shooting, rather than like with NBA or basketball as a whole, where you can kind of shoot technically from anywhere if you want, this you're only allowed to shoot within a particular key. And it's
almost like maybe like as if it would be you can only shoot when you're underneath, like underneath the 3-point line, where it's like there's like a radius. Where it's like
it's kind of like a semicircle that you're allowed to shoot within, and there's only 2 people that are allowed to shoot, which is the goal shooter and the goal attack. So you'll see they'll have these funny bibs, or they'll have their uniform, which has GS or GA, which means goal shooter, goal attack, and then you'll have opposite them goalkeeper, goal defense. And then you'll have other positions, center, wing attack, wing defense, it goes on. But essentially, it is a fascinating sport. It is played by everyone. You have male competitions and unisex competitions, but it is predominantly at a professional level, a female sport. Australia is very good at it. Jamaica is very good at it. England, New Zealand, they're sort of the 4 big teams, if you will. And we have a professional league here. And it is actually a very exciting sport. It was funny. I was such a sport fanatic growing up.
Yeah.
And I remember being in like year 2 or year 3 or something at school. And we had someone come from Netball Australia or Netball Victoria to come and talk to us about it. And she was like asking people questions of, what do you think this stands for? WA. And I was like, wing attack. And she's like, very good. And what do you think GS stands for? I was like, goal shooter. She's like, very good. You must have a sister. I was like, nah, I just like sport. I was just, but it was just on TV. I was watching it as a kid. I was like, show me sport.
Oh, it's funny to think about like you're watching it on TV, and that's like a sport you watch on TV here.
Yeah.
What's funny is I think I did this the last podcast I did was with my friend Quinn, who was in town or whatever, and I realized this is me in real time realizing that I get to talking about so much shit, and I didn't even like. I like to have people like introduce themselves more about like.
Yeah.
I just brushed right over like you introduce. So it's like, please introduce yourself more as far as like you're from here.
Oh sure, yeah.
You're an actor. You do all your introduction.
My self promotion, if you will. Okay, well, yeah. So name aside,
tell them who you are, Charlie.
Yeah, my name is. I'll do the wanky. I'll do my real full name if you like. So
do the full name.
My full name is Charles Jazz Terrier, or Terrier. I'm French Australian, hence the wanky Charles. But there's a race car driver called Charles Leclerc. So if you're ever like, how do you say that? It's that. But yeah, I'm a French Australian. I'm an actor. I'm a filmmaker. I remember being in LA when I was younger, and people would be like, "What do you do?" And they'd be like, "Oh, I do this and this and this and this and this." And I'd say that's what we call a slashy or a multi-hyphenate. Mm-hmm. And now that just seems to be the way that life is now. So I'm a multi-hyphenate as well, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm an actor first. I'm a filmmaker. I love making movies and I love acting in movies. And I'm from Melbourne. I was born here. I grew up between Melbourne, Sydney, and a little bit overseas. I lived in Paris when I was younger as well. But Melbourne's always kind of been home. but for lack of a better word, and home is realistically speaking like 200 meters down the road.
Yeah.
So St Kilda is kind of my sanctuary, my safe place, if you will. But I've lived all over the world doing what I do, and I've traveled extensively for it, which has been really fantastic. I don't want to kind of do the Australians were very funny about this, and we'll probably talk about this, but the shameless self-promotion of I've been in this and this and this, where really it's just you're just telling people facts, but it feels like bragging.
Yeah. Wait, what's it called? The poppy
tall poppy syndrome, which is essentially it's funny now because it's been spoken about so much through podcasts, modern day media, etc., that a lot of people overseas start to realize it. And I think other countries have this. New Zealand, I know, has it a little bit. I think even the UK has it a little bit too. But it seems to be a very endemic thing to Australian culture, which is if you get too big for your boots, even if you deserve to be too big for your boots because you've earned it, people will very quickly try and, cut you off at the knees and pull you back down to size. I don't know why. That just seems to be something we do as a country. But it does, have this insidious nature of infiltrating into your brain, and you go, I'm really proud of this thing I did, and you go to post about it or share it.
Yeah,
and you go,
you stop yourself.
Oh, no, maybe if someone else talks about it, then I can be like, oh, yeah, I did that thing, But
yeah.
But we're getting a lot better at it now with the younger generations coming through, which are a lot, they don't see it as self-promotion. They're just a lot more of, I have something I want to share, and that's fantastic. But, I say like we're old. We're not old by any means. But yeah, there's this part of our community, I think particularly if you're in the creative sphere, that feels like you have to kind of tamper it down until you're sort of blow up or become what they call an overnight success. And then you're like, I can talk about all these wonderful things I've done. Because the reality of being an overnight success is very rarely and very seldom does someone blow up overnight. I mean, even now with viral social media, sure, but it's generally you've been doing something for 5, 10, 15, 30, 50 years even, and someone finally takes notice in a broader spectrum, and that thrusts you into the spotlight. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a lot of interesting conversations about cultural differences between America and Australia, and the tall poppy. It's called tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah,
that's like. So when we've unpacked that and talked about that, I think what I'd like to bring into the conversation that I think we've kind of talked about, but to talk about on the podcast is, I really dislike like very egotistical stuff. And I think there's a fine line between being like confident and cocky and like the bragging or showing off too much that is just like, it's clear that you're just showing off. But then there's like being confident and wanting to share what you're proud of and something you're passionate about, and not being afraid to own what you're doing or whatever. And I think there's always like a gray area for that, and like kind of trying to figure out where you draw the line of like what is confident, good self-promotion that is not being super like egotistical or like I think overall, when I think of tall poppy syndrome, I'm like, part of me is like, that's a great thing. It's a great thing that people want, like inherently want to be humble and modest, and like humility is one of the things that I love the most. So I'm like, it's great that there's, this thing that's trying to keep someone in check from being too prideful and too egotistical, but not to the point where you go, I'm not gonna own my stuff, or I'm going to shrink myself to not be judged by others. So when it's deeply embedded in the culture, that's not a good thing. But it is. I mean, it's so the opposite in America in the sense that like people can be very, very egotistical about what they're doing or whatever. So it is really interesting, and I just find it super interesting.
I mean, I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine maybe a month or so ago, and we were saying. Talking about, that kind of shameless self-promotion and everything. And it was not in a judgment way, but I was even just saying, I think it was like, I very rarely walk down the street in Australia, really anywhere, and see people filming content. Like you might see it in the gym, you know, people are filming their sets or something. It's more of a personal reason typically. Or you might see some teenagers doing a TikTok or something, or maybe on occasion you see someone filming something. But very rarely, and I'm always surprised when I then see something that was shot in my local neighborhood or on the street interviewing someone or doing a reel. Very rarely do I see that, and I'm always like, whoa, that someone did that in Melbourne? Like what? You know, in Sydney?
Because it's just not as common.
It's not as common. Whereas when I'm in the States, I see it all the time. And especially in a place like LA, when I was living in LA and you walk down the streets, it was like, or you sit at lunch, everyone was Instagramming the food, everyone's doing some weird interview. The amount of times, it was almost like a bit of a joke where you're like, how many influences am I going to run into today?
Yeah.
And it was not with any judgment, but it was just kind of like honestly, it was at times envious of the shameless self-promotion of it, because in Australia, I mean, and that was something that was so loved by the Americans when I went over to LA and into the industry as a whole. It was this thing of like, oh, you Aussies, you're so humble, you're so down to earth. We love it, you know. You're so amazing like that. And I'm just going, yeah, mate, because I'm not a fucking cunt. Like, pardon my language, but like, mate, I'm not going to fucking stand there and think everything that comes out of my mouth is that like, I don't know if it's...
That's a good quality to have, man.
Yeah. But this shameless kind of, you know, we have a bit of decorum, if you will, you know, but this self-critical voice in the back of your head going, mate, don't be a fucking wanker. Just shut up and just let the experts speak. Instead of this thing where people are kind of going out there going, this is my opinion, and everyone's got a hot take, and everyone's just throwing their hot takes out there like it's a shrimp on the fucking barbecue, which is not a saying that we use here, by the way.
Dude, I've never really...
We don't use
What's with that one? What is with the shrimp on the barbie?
Well, it came from Crocodile Dundee back in the 80s, and that just became everyone's understanding of Australia. And we'll use it as a piss take, but it's not something we use. And even with like, there's another one that we use, which is we're not here to fuck spiders, which means we're not here to fuck around, basically. But we don't really use that one either. We'll use that very seldom, very rarely. A lot of the ones, you know, there are some great ones out there. Like, don't piss in my cornflakes is a good one.
What is that? What does that one mean?
Don't piss in my cornflakes basically means like just don't
kill my vibe.
Yeah. Don't rain on my parade, sort of thing. There's another one which is don't piss in my pocket. There's a lot of revolving around piss and shit.
What's don't piss in my pocket implying?
It's the same, like don't like blow smoke up my ass. Don't kind of like waste my time, sort of thing. There's another one. I can't remember what it is, which is really irritating, but it's something along the lines of essentially like, don't piss on me and tell me it's raining. You know, which is kind of like don't lie to me. But I mean, look, we can go on and on. Every country has their amazing sayings. I'd probably say it's very rare to find an American one that hasn't crossed over into Australia, because for a long time, Australia has just been consuming American culture, and it's infiltrated into everything from our love of, you know, sports. We do love American sports here. We love NBA. We love NFL. We like, you're harder pressed to find a large baseball and maybe ice hockey community here, but when you do find the people that like, it's a fanaticism, you know. I think probably Australia has followed America's example culturally and politically for a very long time, and really in the last few years, last few administrations has started to veer away from that and probably take more of a Eurocentric approach. Yeah, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But I sort of feel like, yeah, it's starting to rotate a little bit more towards the UK again, who technically we're part of the Commonwealth. So technically, as part of being part of the Commonwealth, we don't have our own, like, we're not an independent country. We are part of this system of countries which signs up to be a part of that. You can be part of the Commonwealth and be an independent country like a South Africa, like a Canada, for example. We haven't done that. We still have the Union Jack on our coat of arms. We have a prime minister. We don't have a president, you know, or an independent leader. The leader of our country is technically the king. Well, before that, the Queen. I'm a big advocate for saying I would love Australia to become a republic. I think that would be great. Doesn't mean we have to turn our back on the UK. I just think we've grown enough as a country, and there's a lot of reparations, and in my opinion, growing up around a lot of Indigenous culture, my mother being an Indigenous art dealer and an Indigenous rights advocate, was really about going, why would we not acknowledge the people that were here for more than 60,000 years before we were? America has its same history with Native Americans and has done more, even if it's not a perfect system, to confront its own past with slavery and Native American history and all that stuff. Australia's kind of, it's a bit of an ugly history. We had what was called the stolen generation, and we've deviated well into it. We're going into deep politics and history and all this stuff, but there you go.
No, this is the whole point.
But there was a period of time back in the, I think it was the 60s, and I want to be careful because I don't want to get anything wrong, but to touch on it, it's sort of the Australian government wanted to sort of breed out Indigenous Australians, you know, by kind of taking children from their families and putting them into essentially white homes to raise them as, you know, white Australians and have them intermarry and have them have kids to essentially breed out Indigenous Australians. So there's a large portion of this country which either don't know or don't appear Indigenous. So they could be white like you and I, but they actually have a strong Indigenous heritage. It's a very dark part of Australian history. It was probably 10, 14 years ago that there was an official apology, like the government said sorry, and it was a big deal. My personal opinion didn't really go far enough. We had a referendum last year, it was a referendum to enshrine a voice in our constitution, acknowledging Indigenous people and to give them a voice on matters that would relate to them. It's a real shame because at the time when the government announced that it wanted to do this, it had about 84% support nationally. But because they didn't just put it through and they went through the process of having a referendum, it became a political issue. And one government, like one major party and one government was on one side saying yes, and another one went down the other path and said no. They said it wasn't due to racial reasons, it was due to that it would be harmful. But I think a lot of people felt that there was a fear-mongering and a racial sort of issue going on underneath. In the end, it didn't pass. It dropped from about 82 to 84% at the start of it to about 12 to 18 months, probably 12 months later, it was about 36%. It did a lot of harm to Indigenous Australians and really to multiculturalism as a whole. I love this country. I love Australia. It's my home. I'm very proud to be Australian. I'm also very proud to be French, but my identity probably centers more around being an Australian. But I don't think we're a perfect country. I don't think we're a perfect democracy. I don't think any country is, to be fair. But I think there's more that can be done. And in a way, I think a lot of the reasons that people voted no was a lack of understanding of what the voice was. A lot of people had a fear that if they said yes, and it got enshrined in the Constitution, that would then force, or Indigenous people would then say, well, then you need to repay us for all the damage, and taxes would go up and land would be handed back and people would lose their livelihoods. And it was like, that's not what it was about. It was very simply just saying, if you're going to try and pass legislation that affects First Nations owners and, you know, Indigenous people, you need to consult them first, which I think is completely fair enough.
Yeah, totally.
But so that's a history.
No, I'm so glad you got to this because I was hoping at some point we were going to get into this because this is really interesting, important history that I think is everyone should know about. So, and I told you I'm not a history person, but I've grown to be as I've got older, especially when you're traveling. It's always nice to like learn the history of the country that you're in and just that is a really interesting specific detail of history that I was not familiar with.
Yeah, and I mean we don't learn a lot about our own country's history, which is kind of insane when you think about it, you know. We learn a lot of world history, at least we did when I went through school. I think it's maybe changed a little bit, but it was pretty much Australian history was always the gold rush, which was like the 1800s, the country being founded in like 1788 when British settlers turned up, World War I, which was a complete disaster for Australians and hundreds of thousands of Australians died at Gallipoli, and World War II, and maybe a little bit of like Vietnam War. The majority of the history that we were really learning was like American history. And when I say American history, I don't mean like your internal sort of history, Civil War, all that sort of stuff. It was more America on the world stage. World War One, from Europe's eyes, World War II from Europe and America's eyes, the Vietnam War from America's eyes, the Cold War from American and Soviet eyes, sort of thing. It was a lot of that.
Interesting.
I studied American history and ancient histories at university because I was interested in it, but it was not.
You did?
Yeah, but it was not something that was kind of openly like, we're going to teach you this. It was like, you can learn it if you want,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wait, as far as your background, because you went to drama school, you did go to, you call it university. So when we
college.
when we say university, we mean college.
Yeah.
You did go to college.
Yeah.
Aside from drama school.
Yeah. So it was funny for me. I finished year 12, or grade 12. What are you saying?
Is that the end of high school?
End of
then?
high school, senior. I finished my senior year of high school. There you go. That's the American term. But so I finished that, and once I came out of high school, I sort of I went into university because I was a bit like, I don't really know what I want to do. I was 17. I was young for my year. And I actually got into film school. I got into this great film school called Swinburne Uni, which is sort of the industry standard, best school in the country for film.
Is that in Victoria?
That's in Victoria. It's just down the road, in fact. Or it used to be. Now it's moved a little bit further out. But I, weirdly enough, because I was young and impressionable, kind of got talked out of it by my high school, which was a very like well-to-do, you must go and do something prestigious and study law or medicine, blah, 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 blah.
Of course.
Yes. And so,
why wouldn't you? It's the proper thing to do.
So I ended up going to, turning that down, which is okay because I ended up finding my way back to film and acting anyway. But I ended up going to a different university called Monash, which is one of the really great universities in the country, along with Melbourne, Sydney, UNSW. There's lots, and we're lucky here. But so I went there and I did an arts degree, like everyone that doesn't know what the fuck they want to do with their life.
Or you go to get a communication degree like I did.
Yeah,
it's
well, communications here, I think communications degree here is much more useful than maybe it is back home. Because you said communications degree, and I was like, oh, that's a good move.
Oh, really?
Whereas I think an arts degree is like a global degree to clean toilets anywhere in the world. Like you know how to do nothing, but you have all these random factoids that you can be like, did you know? But yeah, I went to uni. I went through that. I very quickly was like, oh, this sucks. Like this is not taught well, not what I like, all this sort of stuff. And, I think now I realize I always loved acting. I wanted to do that from a very early age. But the moment, if you will, that I kind of say was the watershed moment for me was actually I went on a mid-semester break, basically, and went to the States for 6 or 8 weeks with my family. My parents were doing an art show in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where we spent a bit of time. We'd lived for a little period of time whilst Mum was sort of bringing Indigenous art to the folk art festivals that were held there. So it was sort of a blend of Native American art and Indigenous Australian art.
Very
cool.
Yeah.
And whilst we were there, I was like, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, all this sort of stuff. And I kind of had this, my first existential crisis, if you will. I just turned 18 and I was like, what is my life? What am I doing? It's a very scary time for me. But I came back and I saw Inception, and I was very depressed at the time because I just realized, what is life even about? I was kind of terrified. I was afraid of everything. I lost a lot of weight suddenly, but I saw Inception, and this thing kind of went off in the back of my head, like, I think I could do that, in this weird, like very naively. And then I went back and I saw it again with another buddy of mine, which I don't usually do, but I was like, yeah, I'll go see it again. And I'm sitting there the second time and I'm watching it and I'm going, this moment, and it's a spoiler alert, but I always say you've had 14 years to see it or 15 years to see it. Was this moment where Leonardo DiCaprio is sort of trying to convince his wife, Marion Cotillard, to come back in from the ledge. She's threatening to jump, sort of thing. And he's like, come back. And in the end, she jumps and he can't save her. She dies. Spoiler. But it was a moment for me seeing his reaction. And I just, again, very naively was like, I think I can do that. And it sat in the back of my mind for probably 8 months. It sort of felt like it was overnight, but it was randomly one day in July, like a year later, or 8 months later, that I woke up and I went, I'm going to be an actor. That's what I want to do. And I literally got up, walked to my computer, typed in, how do I become an actor? Because I didn't know. I signed up for Star Now and all these platforms and just started applying for auditions. And I had so little understanding of how you actually do this. I didn't learn the lines. Like I prepared them, but I didn't know I actually had to learn the lines. So I went to my first audition and they said, okay, whenever you're ready. And I was like, cool. And I'm standing there and they're sitting opposite me and they're like, take it away. And I was kind of like, can I have a script? And they went, oh, yeah, sure. Gave me a script. And I went, cool. And I just started reading it. And they're like, okay. And I was very I got the role. And the first 3 roles I think I went for, I was very lucky to get. So I thought, I must be all right at this, And I look back and now I go, I was awful. I was terrible. You absolutely can learn this skill, But yeah, and so that started me down the path of acting. And then I was lucky enough to get an agent and lucky enough to get into drama school, which was the agent that had come on board, I was literally just meant to meet to sort of start to understand what would be required to even get an agent. And I sat in this agent's office for like 5 hours waiting whilst all the people from drama school that were actually graduating were going in and they all look like rock stars and were like, oh yeah, I'm the biggest thing in the industry. And I'm sitting there like, I think I've made a terrible mistake. I think I should leave, So I walked out and I was standing outside of this house 2 doors down. And this guy walked past me and I thought, oh, this is the guy that would later become my agent. I thought, this is Stephen. It wasn't. It was this other guy called Michael. But it turns out the house that I was standing out the front of at the time was that of Chris Hemsworth's. And they thought, oh, you must be a friend of Chris. Because they're like, you're standing at the front of this house. Probably a handsome actor, give myself a compliment. Yeah. And he said, hi, how are you? And I said, oh, good. And he kept walking. And then later I got called in and I had this thing and I got the agent. And then they said, go to drama school. So I auditioned and I was so terrified. I think I did the worst audition of my life. And it's a funny story because the girl who I had a massive crush on in high school, who was 2 years ahead of me, but I had a massive crush on her. I think everyone did. She was my reader. For drama school.
As if you're not already terrified enough.
Oh, and
now you got to try and impress your crush.
Yeah, so the first audition was fine. It was scary, but it was fine. It was like I did it, and I thought, great, I've done it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And then they fucking called me. I'm like, can you come and do a callback? And I was like, what the fuck is that? And no, And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come and do it. What? And they said, oh, we're giving you the scene from Closer, which is a play and a film later done. And it was I didn't realize that when you get a callback or when you get any audition, you're not supposed to look up the film or the play that it's based on and watch it. You're meant to kind of formulate your own interpretation. So I just watched the film Closer and saw the last scene with Jude Law and Natalie Portman and just thought, cool, I'll just do that. So I just prepared a mimic of Jude Law and went in there and was like doing the voice and doing the actions. And the people auditioning me are like, cool, can you just not do that and just give us you? And I was like, yeah, sure. Just did the same thing because I was so like, I don't know what to do. But as I'm preparing.
Wait, sorry, I have to say this. Yeah. There's been probably 4 people in my life random as fuck, tell me they thought I looked like Jude Law.
I can see it.
Can you see Jude Law?
I also get it too. My mother says it all the time.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
I need to look up Jude Law.
Yeah.
But to me, when I first saw you and I was getting to know you, and I was before I knew you were an actor at all, I was like, I think I said it. I was like, you have the look.
Yeah.
You have the look,
kind.
but now to me, to me is kind of like the Australian Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt mix.
Yeah, I think that's what my agents used to pitch me as over there. They're like, oh, we've got the Aussie Leo,
Yeah, you're the Australian Leonardo DiCaprio, but I also want to say Brad Pitt.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm very happy.
And
with
you'll
those
take either.
No, don't take it.
You'll take either one.
I do a Brad. I have a Brad impression. I stole his voice when I had to. I had a great voice teacher once say to me, if you ever want to figure out an accent, just find an actor or someone's voice you really like and just take it. And I was like, what do you mean take it? Is like literally just mimic them and then find a way to make it your own. So I just started being like, okay. So then I started a couple of years ago. I did it with like
I think you're going to need to do that
Matthew
right now.
McConaughey, yeah. So my way
Matthew
in.
McConaughey would be a fun
Yeah.
impersonation to get really good at.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
he has mastered
Yeah.
the cool guy.
Yeah, and a lot
He's
of
so cool and smooth.
yeah, the funny thing about an Australian accent is, and I think I've said this to you, but we don't use a lot of in acting or in voice work. You'd say tools of articulation. So Americans use your lips, your tongue, your cheeks, your jaw, your soft palate, your hard palate. In Australia, we just use jaw and lips, not even lips. Like I can just talk to you like this and say the camera's going to look and you can hear. G'day, mate. How you going? You having a good day? Yeah. Things are really good. How about you?
Hardly moving lips.
It's ventriloquism. We're a nation of ventriloquists, but Americans, they use a lot more. It's quite easy though for Australians when they have to learn an American accent to do a Southern accent because you're
You're
just
kind of doing
going
that
from here
draw.
and then we're just kind of adding in a bit of a drawl and everything and then we're just kind of like dragging some of the sentences and the lines and everything and then before you know it, it's kind of all right.
I do have to ask you a question though.
Yeah.
Have you ever had my auntie's sweet tea?
Yeah.
She has the best sweet tea
Yeah.
on the south side of Alabama, and it is just.
Yeah.
I tell you what.
I'll probably get roasted by the Americans in the comments.
No,
Like, that's a terrible accent. It doesn't sound anything like that. But it's
No,
funny
it's
because
Well, I also like when you turn into your
Yeah.
American. We're gonna have to have you do an American.
yeah,
we got it.
But it's funny, like the Brad Pitt thing. The way I kind of learned that one was I wanted to sound a little bit more mature when I was going for older roles. So I wanted to sort of take his later in life gruffness and sort of bring that in. And my way in was I watched Inglourious Bastards, and there's a line where he goes, "Each you owes me 100 Nazi scalps, and I want my scalps." And then Gorlami, I'm Italian, And so I just kind of took that, and then I just kind of started speaking from this place, and so it's kind of a bit of a later in life Brad Pitt, but then I just sort of made it my own and sort of pulled back on it a little bit, and kind of found this nice. There's a bit of gruffness in there, but there's also a little bit of softness and depth and the funniest thing about Brad is he's always using his hands and he's always eating, and there's just certain ways that he'll just sort of he'll look at you and he'll just go, "Listen to me, kid, don't fuck with me. You know what you just did? You just bet against the American people. Like, be happy about it. For fuck's sake, stop celebrating."
That's so
pulling
good.
Brad Pitt lines out of my house.
Wait,
Yeah.
I got it.
I'll take it.
Or wait, I thought I had a cheer in here somewhere.
We can have the laughter effect. It works, but
Cheers, mate.
oh, there we go. That works. That's yeah.
Cheers, mate.
You'll never get an Australian saying to another Australian, "Cheers, mate." But it's yeah. So that's we're going all over the topic board here. But I think in that sense, like that was a big thing for me of learning about acting and going to drama school and everything. Oh yeah, to finish the story. So I'm reticent. I'm like, do I name this girl because then everyone's gonna know I had a crush on her? Do I not name this girl? But it'd be funny if it got back to her.
Well, it's up to you.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny because I guess in short, she was super lovely to me. When I was auditioning, she was really gave me the time and space, everything. The funny part about it is we got in there and before we started, they're talking to me and they're like, "All right, so you need anything, whenever you're ready." When they say, "Whenever you're ready," I go, "Okay, cool." It's been maybe 30 seconds to a minute. I turn back to this girl, Penny. Her name is Penny Mitchell. So Penny, if you're out there, hi. She's a fantastic actress. She's been doing really well.
So she's still doing it.
Yeah. She's been very successful. She's been lots of stuff, and I think she's related to Radha Mitchell, who's another very well-known Australian actress. So it's a small world. But so I turn back to face her, and she's sitting there bawling her eyes out, and I'm just like, "What have I done?" I was like, "Shit." She was just dropped in. She's just prepared, ready to go, fully present for the scene. And I just was like, oh, shit, what do I do? And we start the scene and we're breaking up. And now I'm trying to wrap my head. At that point, I wasn't able to differentiate between the two. So I was like, I'm dating Penny Mitchell and now she's breaking up with me. Shit. What did I do? And then when she's talking about, like, I think in the scene they're talking about sex or something, or how they used to make out and how she slept with another man. I'm just like, it's too much. I can't process what's happening, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then she just out of nowhere is in the scene. Her character says, "I don't love you anymore." She just goes, "I don't love you anymore." And I was like,
your dreams.
I'm like, I'm not dropped in. I was like, I didn't know what a drop in was. I was like, I'm just like, sort of struggling. And we get to the end of it, and I try a bunch of other things, and she's great, and I'm awful. And we turn and we face the panel, and this director leans across the table and just looks at me, and he goes, "You robbed me of that performance, mate." And I was like, "There's nothing worse I could have heard in that moment." He basically just said, "You fucked it." And I went,
fuck.
And I think the only reason why I got in the end was they could see how much I wanted it and how passionate I was. And then I got in, and the rest is history. I loved drama school at the end, but my first day, and I've said this to you, I fucking hated it. I got home, Mum was like, "How was your first day?" And I was like, I fucking hated it, because I thought it was going to be drama games and laughter and improv and fun. And it was standing in a circle screaming and crying for like 3 hours. It was not what I thought it was going to be.
Damn, yeah. You're like, but whatever expectations I had,
yeah,
it is way the fuck different.
Yeah. And I've said this to people. I know a lot of people that went through drama school and for one reason or another afterwards either did acting for a bit and decided to leave, find something else, whatever it was. But I truly believe going to drama school the way I did back then, and what drama school was back then, was because it wasn't a formal university or college education sort of thing. It was more of what they called the American style of teaching, which was more emotions based and opening you up as a person. I think that as confronting as it can be is one of the best things you can do as a human, because you really learn to be able to access your vulnerability, and providing you're in a safe space with people that love you, which an acting class becomes a family. I grew so much as a person in that very short amount of time. I felt like if it probably wasn't for acting school at that point in time, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And it gave me a trajectory in which to keep growing and to work on. And there was professional jobs that came my way as a result. But I got thrust into some pretty amazing situations, and it was a sink or swim type moment. And thankfully I swam. But there were also plenty of moments where I failed or sunk. And I learned from them, and I came back up for air. And, that's life. That's the growth. But there was also a period of time where I think some early successes in my career really made things happen, and I was in LA and I was working and I had great representation. I was going up for these huge parts, and I felt like such an imposter. I think the second audition I ever did in America was for Star Wars, and I was terrified. I was like having a breakdown. I was like, whoa, yeah, how do I, because my first audition, I'd never done a US accent before at that point, so I didn't really know how to do one. And now I can do one comfortably, pretty much on command, but it's only through repetition. So I was so terrified. I'm pretty sure I had a breakdown before I went in for my audition. And I went in, and they said, "Oh, whenever you're ready." And I said, "Can I do it in Australian?" I saw on the sides, it said natural accent was welcome. And they said, "Please, we're so over American accents, please." And when I'm in Santa Monica and I do this, and this lady walks out halfway through, and I think, oh, maybe it's not going well. Turns out it actually went really well. And I left feeling on top of the moon and all that stuff, and it was great. But, that kind of those experiences, when I came back to Australia, kind of, I think now, maybe it wasn't as bad as I think it was. But I kind of look at it and I go, fuck, I kind of became so arrogant and up myself, because I went from being someone who's just going to have to learn about the industry and earn everything to being thrust maybe 10 steps ahead of where I really was or where I was ready. Because it was at a time where if someone thought you had something, they would, be like, great, let's do it. And so I was constantly having this imposter syndrome and feeling like I've got to prove myself constantly. I've got to show them how good I can be. But at the same time, I was like, I'm being given these opportunities, so clearly I must be good enough. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but I look at the work I did back then now, and it's not that I think it's bad. I just go, it was probably good for where I was at the time.
Right.
But it is nowhere near the level I am now. And I remember thinking at the time and remembering now, like the way I was talking, I go, fuck, how could you even say that? Like, you're just like, yeah, I'm auditioning for this thing and this thing and this thing. And, oh, this agent wants to sign me, or, you know, I've got a call back for this. And I think I fell in love with not in a good way. I fell in love with the process and not the result. When I say that, I go, now I fall in love with the process, it was very different. I was falling in love with just the fact I was getting auditions and getting close and getting opportunities, but not actually falling in love with doing my best work and making progress as an actor. I was kind of feeling like, well, if I'm getting good feedback and if I'm getting these opportunities, clearly I'm good enough and I deserve to be here, rather than really focusing on the goal of improving as a performer and improving as a person, as an actor. And now being so much older, well, not so much older, but being older and being more mature and having developed a skill set that I can be like, it's a weird thing where we talk about tall poppy syndrome, but you get to this point as an actor after all these years and I go, I'm really fucking good at what I do. And that takes a lot to be able to say that and not feel a sense of imposter syndrome. And that's a weird thing, especially as an Australian, to say that openly. Because if you said that to someone in our industry, they'd be like, mate, you're a bit up yourself. And I go, no, it's not that. It's, I believe it because I've worked really hard and I have had meaningful feedback from people who in this industry who I trust and who I believe. And it's been evidence in the work I've done. But I've worked really hard and I deserve to be able to say this about myself, because if I don't, who will? And that's the big thing about the States. When you go over to the States, I remember someone telling me, and I've had people like Rebel Wilson say this as well, and other big Australian actors that say, if you don't tell them how good you are, they won't buy the humble shit. Like if they're like, wow, so you're like the biggest thing in Australian TV, and you're like, oh no, they'll be like, oh, okay, well then why the fuck should we sign you? You have to be like, yeah, I am. Even if you're like, I don't believe a word of it, you have to do that because it is a sales mentality. It's the competition and the confidence and everything.
Yeah.
So it's funny, you know, and I think a lot of it for me, as I say to people, like I've probably had a lifetime worth of experience in the space of about 10 years in this industry. And that's a good thing. Right, but everything that could happen, good, bad, everything in between has kind of happened. And it sucks when it happens. If it's not good, it's amazing when it happens and it is good. But I almost look at, if my career had taken off when I first went over to LA or was first starting out, amazing. But I don't think I'd be a very good person. I don't think I'd necessarily be proud of the person I am today. I love the struggles I've been through, as hard as they've been, because I've become a more well-rounded person, a more grounded person. I have a lot of compassion and empathy for people. I'm proud of the person, and I'm proud of the actor and the performer and the filmmaker I am today, because I feel like I've had to earn it.
Yeah.
And there's a big thing to be said. And I remember people would say it to me all the time when I was younger. They're like, it's not about the result. It's not about the end. It's about the journey. And I was like, fuck the journey. You know, I just want to get the fucking result, man.
Yeah.
But it really is about the journey. And I'm not there yet, you know, like I'm still on my journey. I'm still going. But I had a buddy of mine say to me recently, Rowan, you know, not recently, he said it to me ages ago, many years ago, in fact. He said, I got to hand it to you, man. I said, yeah. He said, you're the only person I know who said, I'm going to do this thing, and then went out and did it. You could quit now and you've actually achieved your goal. And I said, well, I haven't, because the goal's changed. He said, I know, but the original goal that you set out to do, you've done it. And that's the thing. That's where the evolution comes in. And I remember having a great acting teacher, this guy called Larry Moss, say this to me. It's a great metaphor for life. But he said, you know, what is your mountain and what is your mountaintop, sort of thing. The journey of climbing the mountain is the thing you remember, not the standing on top of it for 10 seconds. If I dropped you on top of Mount Everest tomorrow without you having to do the climb, you'd be like, what an amazing view. And you probably remember it. But the reason why getting to the top of the mountain means so much is because you went through all the hardship to get there. You risked your life, your safety, your everything. It might have taken you 10 years of training to be able to do it. It's the cumulative sum of the experiences that bring you to the mountaintop that makes life and makes the achievement worth it. Because this same guy, Larry, he works with Leo a lot and Juliette Binoche and a lot of amazing actors. But he said, I remember he turned to this whole auditorium of people once that we were working on this play with, and he said, do you think they get to the top of the mountaintop and they're like, amazing, I did it. I don't have to do anything ever again. No. They get there and they're like, I did it. It's amazing. Now what? The ecstasy of the moment of winning the Oscar, whatever it is, of making it, however you deem being successful, making your first million, becoming the MVP, winning the Super Bowl, whatever it is, it lasts for a nanosecond in the grand scheme of life. And then you have to have the next thing. He says, do you think they get there and they feel fulfilled? No, they have a breakdown because they're like, now what do I do? And then they have to find the next mountain. So you need to line up the next mountain so that when you're looking around like, wow, you can turn and be like, there's my next challenge.
Yeah.
And Matt Damon said this after he won the Oscar for Good Will Hunting when he was first starting. He said he went home, and I mean, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but this is sort of an urban legend that I've heard that I think he's said in interviews too, that I kind of use as a North Star, which is he says, I got home after winning that Oscar and I had a breakdown because I went, now what? Everything I was working toward in my entire life and my entire career that I thought would take me my entire life, I've just achieved. Now what the fuck do I do? He had to pick himself up and start again. Because he's like, I've done it. I could quit tomorrow. Now I have to do it because I love it or because there's something else driving me.
Yeah.
So it's a long-winded sort of tangent, but
no, it's all really great stuff. And okay, a few things. One, because you were so kind enough to invite me to the movie premiere.
Yeah.
A Little Resistance. It's a war movie that you wrote with your friend and directed, and it took such a fucking cool, amazing story of how that was like 9 years in the making by the time it was. But seeing you act in that and everyone else who acted in that, man, like genuinely, I was like, this feels like a major film that you'd see in the movies, like like the cinematic shots, the directing, everything about it was so cool. So when this isn't one of those like fake things where it's like, of course you're gonna say nice things to your friend when they, that
good
kind
for
of
you, man.
That was good, man. But like, it's like, I especially wouldn't say it here on the podcast. Like, I see your talent, like you're super fucking talented, and so is everyone in that film. I was like, everyone had little moments where they shined or stuck out to me or whatever, but it was like, I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole of like how fucking cool that film is, the backstory of how it came together. It's so impressive what you guys were able to do with that. But I just meet you. We're fast friends of just like-minded friends coming together, and I got to go see the movie on the big screen and see you act. You showed me some videos of you acting, which was also very impressive. But to see you in your element doing your fucking thing, I was like, wow, you are super fucking talented. And so is a lot of these friends that you went to to theater school with. Like, holy shit, what a crew of like...
ragtag group of revolutionaries, I think was the line from the movie. But we were very, very lucky. I mean, the story of how that all came about, Mike was, in short, he wanted to make this film since he was like 5, I think, since he first got a camera. He was like, I want to make a war film. And we would talk about it. We became friends through drama school very quickly, similar to you and I, It was quite funny. It was I was dressed as Al Pacino that night, and there was this big drama going on in the school, and one class, their class is over there and our class is over there, and everyone's talking, and I just stood up in the middle of it and made this speech, and he just sort of watched me, and he came over and he's like, we should be friends. And I went, yeah, man, sounds good. You know, let's be friends. And we would hang out, and he'd always say, I got this. I want to make this war film. I want to make it, you know, all this sort of stuff. And I said, okay, well, what's it look like? You know, what's the story? What's the deal, etc. And he would tell me everything, and he'd be like, I don't know how to start. I'll write a short film. I'll write this. I'll write that. And I said, yeah, cool. And it was, you know, similar to what I was saying before. It was 2016 that we started. It was Obama was in the White House, you know.
Yeah.
And we. Before we started, I was in America, and professionally speaking, my whole kind of world just fell apart. And it was a moment for me. It was a watershed moment for me where I went, okay, if I want my career to happen the way I want it to, I need to take charge of it, because no one else is going to do it. No one else cares as much as I do, because there's only one me. So I came back to Australia, and I said to Mike, I think even before I came back, I said, you want to make that movie? He said, yeah. It was like Facebook Messenger. And I was like, cool, let's do it. And I got back, and the day I got back, I messaged him. I said, cool, I'll come over. Let's start. And we just started putting it together. And I said, and he was like, okay, so I think it's like 3 short films. And I went, well, 3 short films is basically a feature. So why don't we just make a feature? Now, we had no idea how to make a movie. You know, this is that thing of, I could have gone to that university, you know, course and learned filmmaking back in 2010 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And here I was, you know, 6 years later, suddenly discovering filmmaking and learning on the spot. This film was was our university education. We did everything. We wrote, we directed, we produced, we did sound, we did editing, we did costume, we did makeup, like anything that had to be done, any gap we did. And we employed all our friends. You know, my ex-girlfriend was in that, all our best friends at the time, people that we didn't even know, but that were sort of from the same acting community, were like, come on in, let's get as many people as we can. And we shot the whole thing in 2016, end of it. And we were even shooting when Trump won the election the first time, when everyone just stopped and was like, let's watch the TV, you know. But we shot the whole thing in 2016, and then we went back and we edited through 2017, and we got to the end of it and we went, oh shit, we got to do it again, because we realized we learned so much and there was so much more that we could do better, that we went back and we shot it again in 2018. And then we started editing in 2019. And then I got this job on this TV show over in America, shooting in Atlanta. So I was going back and forth between LA and Atlanta, and Mike was working, you know, full time. And then COVID happened, and that shut the world down for a bit. And then we got to, you know, by the time Australia really came out of the grips of COVID, it was 2022. And Mike sort of came to me, and I'd pushed it a long time. And I said to him, you know, it's important to me that as much as this film is mine and is ours, it's also your dream. So I really want you to feel proud of the finished product. So I want you to come to me when you're ready to really want to finish this. And he did. And that was, you know, end of 2022. And I said, let's do it. And we went balls to the wall with it. You know, we pulled every favor we had. We did so much work. Mike did so much work editing on it too. You know, like, yeah, I did a lot of work, but it's a real testament to his powers too, because there was a lot of things that I didn't know how to do that Mike did, you know, or Mike learned to do on his own to really make that happen, and to finally get to a point where it was polished and finished, that we had written this thing and directed this thing and produced this thing. And that was a lot of logistics, coordinating 54 people every day. I mean, that's a lot of where I learned how to produce and where my love of directing and writing came from. And then both of us also acting in it. And to finally get to that point where literally this time last week, we premiered it to, well, cast and crew. You know, we showed it to the cast and crew and close friends of the production. And you know, and it was so fantastic to have you there. And it yeah, exactly what you said. Like it went off. It's the craziest movie screening I've ever been in. And it was for my own movie, because it was so many people that dedicated so much time and love and patience to see this thing come true.
Right.
And, you know, to just, I mean, we thought people would enjoy it, but it really did feel like every bit of feedback we got was not a, hey man, well done, like that's cool. It was a genuine, holy shit, how did you do it? What? Because so many people, like 90% of the room, probably more, 95, even 99% of the room, maybe 3 people had actually seen the project the whole way through. The majority of people never saw anything outside of what they shot. So they had no idea or conception of what this thing was going to look like. And we did it on next to nothing, 10 grand, you know, and we did as much as we could to put all the production value up on the screen. And we shot it in his backyard. We turned his backyard into a series of trenches, and you watch the film and you can't tell that. But once you tell people, they're like, oh yeah, I see the trench. And it's like, you don't know that though.
No. And dude, and that was, now the way that it's all brought together from an editing standpoint, using footage from different eras of shooting, turning the backyard into a war zone and using all the props of war stuff and painting squirt guns to make them guns or whatever the fuck you got. Like, you know, the context that I got from Mike, you guys speaking about it before screening it, and then like afterwards seeing the table with all like the pictures and just like props, and it's like, I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
How the fuck did you do this? And I just met you, and I'm just like, what a cool fucking moment where I get to be like maybe one of the more objective randos in the theater going, this isn't, you know, I have a love in it, like some connection where it's like I have a background in dabbling with acting and, you know, improv and act. So I have some connection to like, I can appreciate art. I can appreciate, I've made some videos, like, but it's like, I know nothing about filmmaking for like a short film. And it's like, I'm blown away at what you guys were able to create with so little and not with a ton of experience or a ton of fucking money. Cause it's like, again, it's a fucking war film.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a war film.
Yeah. And it's a period piece too. So it's not even modern. It's like 1950s. So we have to.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like the era of the wardrobe, the era of. Yeah. And for it to not suck complete ass because you're trying to do something that you would think you would need so much money for special effects, so much money for the wardrobes and the costumes, and to try and tap into the character of the time period. And it's like, it was captivating. I was fucking locked in. Yeah. And it was like, what the fuck, dude? Yeah. It was so inspiring, so cool. Wait, I want to jump back to a few things because you said so much cool shit, quoting those actors and talking about it's about the journey or whatever. And there was one thing in particular that, I don't know if it was like fucking Tony Robbins or some like, someone said like, it's not about the goal, it's who you become in the pursuit of the goal. Yep. And it's the same cliche thing that we all know is true, but it's easy to lose sight on. And it's always a great reminder of like, I think another example that flew into my head was there's doing something, do the job or pursue the thing that's cool, that's going to get you attention and to get you validation from others, where it's like, whatever's trending, being an entrepreneur, like starting a business or doing something that's going to get you. And then it's like, if it's all about impressing people and like getting admiration from people, but then if you sit in a room and you go, what would I pursue if it was just for the pure fulfillment and love of the process? If the process is what truly matters the most and where you grow the most and where you get true fulfillment from, then you remove the external validation, you remove the perception of others. You just go, if I was the only person on the planet and I was going to choose some paths that were going to be the process I loved the most, and then you start answering those questions for yourself. And I think when we're young and we romanticize being famous and we think about, you know, we want to do the job that's going to get us laid and get us the most amount of opportunities with attractive women, or like whatever the underlying driving force is, like why we do what we do. And that this is all the deeper psychology that fascinates me about like Simon Sinek, that author, and talking about start with why. Why am I doing what am I doing is better than, and it's all ingrained into the same thing where it's like, we should always try and lead with why or whatever. And that just to tie it into like the milk the day thing, which I haven't told you this story of how this fucking brand evolved and how it became a thing or whatever, but just to remind whoever's listening and to tell you, it's like this, because I'm this really broad, I have a lot of passions. I'm passionate about a lot of things, and I like to talk about fitness and comedy, and I like to fucking joke around, have these deep conversations, like this wide range of things. I just thought when I was trying to identify the vehicle and the outlet where I would feel most fulfilled and where I feel like I could add the most value, it's like once podcasting became a thing and I was playing with it, I was like, oh, like choosing podcasting is a fun outlet for providing the opportunity to really get in to deep human connection and have a variety. Let's be laughing and joking around. Let's get into these deeper conversations. But the why, I've always loved the simplicity where it's like milk the day, spread positivity. It's about positivity, but it's not the phrase seize the day that everyone knows about, where it says, let's make the most of the day. Yes, let's do that. And that's going to look different because everyone loves different things. Like you making the most out of your day and how you quote unquote seize your day is different than everyone. Because now it's talking about what do you love to do? Do what you love to seize your day. I would say it's like it coexists, where it's like when I lost 3 closer friends in a car accident when I was in high school, I was at their funeral as like a pallbearer with the coffin and shit, and then you're in a fucking stadium of people.
Yeah, wow.
The moment for me that like inspired the milk the day lifestyle, which is just this simplistic idea of like, I'm going to live today. Every fucking person I interact with, I'm going to just try and focus on like spreading the kindness and the positivity to everyone I touch and making those little moments matter, because you never know what fucking mood someone's in, what someone's going through, and realizing how precious life is. But it's sitting there looking around at like a stadium full of people, hundreds and hundreds of people who are in that room because they were touched and felt connected and knew or like enjoyed the energy and life of these amazing people. And then you sit there and you look around and you're like 18 or 19 or however fucking old I was, and I was just like, the light bulb went on then when it's just like, this is obviously the only thing that matters. And it's never been more tangibly true. It's right in front of me. It's like you can sit and pursue some some more self-centered thing, and then like you impressed a bunch of people, but you didn't impact them in any way that was maybe that meaningful or whatever. And it's like that. It's like, okay, make a difference and also be fulfilled. Do the shit you love, but with the right intentions. And now it's just like, that's the thing that inspired Milk the Day and this like lifestyle thing. And then it was like evolved, and I was like, oh, I'm going to be a comedian. Let me put on a milkman suit and be the brand ambassador for it. And then I was like, oh, I want to do comedy videos, whatever. But anyway, I don't know. I feel like the more I have conversations with people on doing these podcasts, is I never know where it's going to go. And I'm thinking back on like 20 minutes ago, and it was like, we're covering it's all about talking. We always end up talking naturally and organically about things that light us up and that we're excited about. And to that passion and that love for what we're talking about is like, that's what makes this so fun. And that's what hopefully is entertaining or adds some value to people. It's just like, I can never get enough of connecting with people, learning from people, and having the kind of conversations that I want to have with people who, I don't know.
No. It's spot on. I think it's such an excellent point you make, and the message behind Milk the Day, I think, is so meaningful and so moving, because, I mean, it's something. What you're touching on there is it's kind of a similar sort of existential sort of moment for yourself where you're like, why does nothing else matters outside of this? You know, like I'm aware choosing to be an actor, being this, like, it's an inherently selfish thing to do. I'm saying this is what I want to do with my life. You know, I want to act. I want to be in movies, plays, films, all that sort of stuff, TV, etc. That's what I want to do. Now, when I was younger and I first was like, I want to give this a go, and I think this is what I want to do. Yeah, there was a lot about external validation. It was a way to meet girls. It was all these things, but there was also this underlying like I love this, even if it scares the shit out of me. I love this. I love entertaining. I love performing. I love making people laugh.
Yeah,
I got into acting because I wanted to do stand up. I wanted to do comedy, and I was terrified. You know, but I was like, I want to do that. And then the drama school was like, yes, you'd be perfect for drama. And I was like, no, you know?
Yeah.
But I learned to love of drama as a result and acting and all that stuff. And I still adore comedy, and I haven't done as much with it, but I've written comedy shows. I have done stand-up. I'd like to do more of it and everything as well. But I went down this very heavily dramatic path. And now that I'm getting older, I'm like, just enjoy life. But the reason why I say this is because the whole process is like, when you think about it, everything in life is inherently selfish. Everything we do is inherently selfish because we're thinking, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to eat.
Right.
I want to that. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
Like we hear selfish and we go, that's bad. It's not bad. It's actually just what's fundamentally required to live and exist in this world. You know, if you don't go like, oh yeah, I want to go and do this now. Or I want to go home because I want to sleep, you're probably going to drive yourself into the hole, you know, and you're going to run out of steam and all this stuff. It's not a bad thing to be selfish. It's a bad thing to be selfish when it, you know, negatively impacts others. When you have the ability to make a positive difference and you choose not to, or choose to make a negative difference to someone, because sometimes there's times where opportunities to make a positive difference come up, but you can't take it because, you know, it's not to say like, oh, you don't have the time. It's like that might negatively impact you though. That might, you know, cause damage to someone else that you care about. It's not to say that, you know, you have to do all that, but it is this thing of going, to me, and it's funny, like I got to meet Hugh Jackman a number of years ago, at my drama school, and he sat down and I asked him a question because he had this whole ethos around being a nice guy versus being a good guy. And I said, what's the difference? And he looked at me dead in the eyes. So like 10 minutes straight, he just talked just to me. It was an amazing moment, but it was also really meaningful. He said, the difference between a nice guy and a good guy, Charles, is that a nice guy will go above and beyond to help people at the behest of himself. He will sacrifice his own livelihood or things that will make him better or happier in life to help put someone over him. A good guy will go out of their way to help someone, providing it doesn't negatively impact on themselves, their family, or things that are important to them. If someone has a problem with you doing that, they are not a good person for you. Not to say they're a bad person, it's just they're not a good person for you. And he said, if you can get that through your head now and make that distinction, your life will be immeasurably different. Now, granted, it took me a while to get the hang of that. For a long time, even now, I still have moments I work on it and I go, if I'm helping this person, and it cost me roles in the past. I helped two of my best mates get roles on shows that I was up for, that I was on hold for, because I helped them with their audition. And I'm very happy I did that. I don't regret that at all. But I was like, oh, let's do this. Like I wanted to make sure they did a job that they would be proud of. But that was at the same time working against me.
That's a good That's a good personal example.
But it taught me something of, in that case, that didn't bother me looking back on it now. But there are times in my life when I've actively worked against myself because I've been trying to help someone because I felt, without going into all my past traumas and everything, you know, maybe for another episode or for therapy, but I felt less than. I felt unworthy of love and unworthy of respect, and I felt like I was a bad person and I had to prove my worth by going above and beyond to help someone, because to me, going above and beyond, that to me was a sign of a good person, not going, yes, I can help you, or no, I can't help you because that will negatively impact me. And that was a big difference for me and a big distinction that helped me make a big difference, you know, in my own life. Because the reality is, and I said to a friend of mine a while ago, I think it was like last year as a joke, I said, can we stop making dickheads famous? Like, can we stop making, when I say selfish, I don't mean like, oh, everyone's inherently selfish. I mean, can we stop making people that have no interest in positively impacting the world or using their platform to do good famous? Because we're doing a lot of that. And yeah, sure, there are people out there. I'm not going to necessarily give examples, but there are many billionaires, multimillionaires, very, very famous people out there who go, yeah, but I make music for these people or I act in these things or whatever. And I go, sure, but don't lose the reality of the impact you're having. You could make a life or death difference to someone, but you're choosing to ignore that to just focus on, oh yeah, look, I made this new movie and look how important I am. There's a way that, like, to me, part of my underlying goal in being an actor is when I was younger, fame was the goal because I was not egotistical in a bad way, but I was naive and I wanted this and I thought this will make me happy and everything. But to me, as I've gotten older and really what I realized the underlying thing was to me, I went, being good at what I do, being the best at what I can do, leads inevitably to success. Who's to say what that success looks like? It's different. It evolves over time. It doesn't just mean, oh, it's this. But as long as you don't quit, you will eventually become successful. But then to me, I go, and then if I'm successful, when you're successful at something, people seek you out. So you develop a level of notoriety or quote unquote fame. Once you have fame, you have impact or, the ability to influence. Now, if you're influencing, there's a way that you can influence in a way which is purely solipsistic and selfish and purely for your own self-aggrandizement that revolves around external validation. Or there's a way that you can impact and influence people in a positive manner that, yes, maybe at times it's, hey, I've got this new movie. Wow, you're so good in the movie. Sure. But there's a way, like you see people like Leo doing, going, hey, there's this climate crisis going on, or hey, there's this thing going on over here. People speaking out about injustices in the world, people stepping up and helping in crisis zones, in natural disasters and all this, using their platform to draw attention, donate money, raise money, do all these things. To me, acting and filmmaking and being successful in that is the trunk of the tree that enables me to grow and explore all the branches of influence that I want to have in my life. And then from there, it's going further into, and if I can do that, then that allows me to then help other people. And that might mean, politics is so fraught and such a crazy, toxic field. But at the same time, I'd go, if I could be a world leader for one day, God, there's certain things I'd do that in my idea would make the world a better place. It's not about launching wars. It's about ending them, But if I could be president of the world for a day, this is what I do, sort of thing, But then I go, there are ways as well that I go outside of that. You look at people like a Taylor Swift, a Leonardo DiCaprio, a Khloe Kardashian, Kylie Jenner, whoever these people are, and you go, what are they doing to make the world a better place? Some are doing more than others. Some are doing none. Some are doing lots. This is not passing judgment on anyone, but I just go, for me. And they always say that thing of the measure of a man is not what he's doing when people are watching, it's what he's doing when no one's watching. And I kind of believe that's true in the sense of, for me, rather than my issue with social media when I was younger was I didn't like having to try and convince people that I was more important than what I was. I was like, let me go and get good at what I do and get successful. And then, then I might have your attention. And then when I have your attention, then I can set about making a difference in the world and having a positive impact. And that's still my goal now. My emotions and my personal views around social media has changed. I think it's a wonderful tool. I think it's fantastic for connecting people. But for me, I never really got introduced to it in that way. I got introduced to it as a career tool, which is why I always felt like I had to make peace with the demons, if you will.
Yeah.
But, that being said, like the same thing, we live in this fascinating time and place where now everyone through social media, they're not just a channel, they're not just a profile. They are a channel. They are something you can tune into. So many people make reels, their posts. Everyone in a way is their own Netflix. That's what TikTok has become. You follow these people because you want to watch their content. So everyone now has ability to entertain, make a difference, etc. It's just some people are coming more from a place of it's all about me and I want to focus on my world. And there are some people going, hey, this is what I do and this is what makes me famous and this is my content. But every now and then they go, hey guys, there's this really big thing we need to pay attention to over here. Let's look at this, you know?
Dude, you said so much good stuff there.
Yeah.
The social media thing, yeah,
we're an hour and 25 in. I'm just, you know, we're going to take it to his first AFL game tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
so
we're literally after this, we're going to an
going
AFL game.
Straight to the mecca of Australian sport, the MCG, the McG.
Yes, which is the big cricket arena.
Yeah, Melbourne cricket ground where we play predominantly Aussie rules football. But back when it was built as the MCG, we didn't really have AFL at that level yet. We had cricket and that was it.
Yeah, we'll wrap up soon, but fuck, I'm enjoying this. I feel like we could go for 3 hours easy.
Yeah,
we should.
It's a Huberman podcast, you know.
Yeah.
5 hours later, here are my thoughts on neuroscience. You know,
before I lose my train of thought.
Yeah.
I've thought a lot about the whole too random because there's so many directions I want to go in with what you said, like talking about social media and the intentions behind that or whatever. But I've thought a lot about defining success and, you know, the fame thing and making an impact and being able to influence other people. And I think I've broke it down in my head a little bit like this, is that I've sat there and I've meditated on it and I've thought about how there's a difference between wanting to reach and impact as many people as you can through your work. Whatever that is, acting, content creation, whatever. And that being like pure intentions where you go, I'm proud of what the work that I do. And I think my work is good. And I think my work is valuable to others. Therefore, I don't have to feel egotistical to try and get it out to as many people as possible because I have the right intentions and because I think that I can add value. And then an unintentional side effect by your level of popularity is that you get recognized and you might make more money and whatever. And that's just how the world works. But if you don't have, I think this applies to so many things. A lot like two things can be true at once, or four things can be true at once.
Yep.
Someone can also really desperately want the appreciation and love of tons of people because there's some hole in trial, whatever it is. But they also can have a real true desire to want to help people and make a difference as well.
Yeah.
So I think things can coexist together. I think there's a lot of people that start off with more selfish, egotistical reasons where it is about the fame and we can just be honest about it. And then later in your life, or you get a taste of the success and you're unfulfilled, and then you reevaluate and reshape your intentions where you can rediscover and redefine what success is. And sometimes getting all the more superficial things are the thing that you needed first. There was no other way that person was going to learn it, was let me taste the success and the money. And then you're like, wait, I thought that was going to make me happier or more fulfilled. And now I feel this emptiness. Why? Let me unpack. That's fine that things can be repurposed and that we can evolve. There's literally no shame in that, because as long as you have the right intentions or eventually develop the right intentions and things can evolve. And so I've thought a lot about, I've also thought about I want to be successful. So, because I think most of us who want a long-term partnership and like want to build a life with someone who's attractive and a great person and just like a high quality person, we all like want to attract someone who's amazing. And how like fame and attention is like something that you would assume is going to give me a higher probability of opportunities for that. That's not, I guess, in comparison to being like, I just want everyone's approval. Yeah. There's nothing terribly wrong about being like, I want success because I want to attract other successful people, but not superficial people. I want someone who has an amazing worth ethic and is very generous and hardworking and talented. That's not wrong.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a big thing of they say you are the total sum of your 5 closest friends, and I think there's a. It's not to say that it's entirely true, but I think the point that it makes is very accurate.
Dude, I love that quote so much because it makes you, dude, you can so deeply think about that and to really take inventory of being like, wait, who am I choosing to surround myself by? And what kind of people are those people? And what does that say about me? And how does that influence me? Because it is so important, our environment and the people around us and how that influences us. It's so fucking important.
You know, I think again, it's why I think it's such a great point is because you can take it literally or you can, you know, take it metaphorically. But you can either way. There's an element to it, which is if you don't like who you are, change the environment you're in. You know, it's this kind of funny thing of I say like my kind of view on life. This is maybe a little bit more holistic, but I think a lot of people view life as a linear thing, point A to point B. You know, you start here, you finish here, type thing. My perspective on life is a little bit more like a circle. You start at point A and you finish at the same point. Life is kind of this funny thing of you're born perfect. And from that space when you're born...
Wait, sorry, pause. Yeah. Yo, Jenna.
Hey. What's up?
Jenna, Charlie.
Hey, nice to meet you. How you doing? Bring it in. I love it.
Jenna just got oh my God, the camera turned off.
Oh, it died?
No way.
Oh, there you go. Well, we have been going for an hour and a half, so...
Wait, I have a present for you guys. I don't know if you like pastries. Do you like sweet stuff?
Love sweet stuff. Oh my God.
Is it from the cafe?
It's pistachio, and I know he loves pistachios.
Yeah.
I do.
I have a whole bunch of pistachio chocolate at home, by the way.
Wait, fuck, the camera's off. What the fuck?
Did it die?
Dude, it was charged. It had full battery. Is it off? It's off, yeah.
It's off, yeah.
Fuck.
We still have a podcast.
I know,
You
but
just take all the video content from the first half and go, and then the camera died.
All right, well,
To be fair,
yeah, we need to wrap up
we
anyway.
should go.
I know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
But to finish that point, just to say, so life is like you're born perfect at point A. The reason why you're born perfect is because you have no sins, no nothing, no preconceived notions. You're just existing. You don't have a concept of self yet. You're just there. And your entire life, in my perspective, is getting you back to that place at the end of your life where you go, I've had an amazing life. I've come full circle. I was perfect all along. There's nothing wrong with me. Every good, every bad I've done. It's just been trying to get back to this person I was when I was a child that I didn't know that I was when I was a baby was perfect. But now I understand that's the real me. That's how I like to view it. Because I just go, if you view it linearly, if you view it on a linear nature, it feels like this thing of you have to start here and finish here, and you have to get to a point. But the reality is, everything is just about coming full circle, becoming whole. You know.
Wow. No, that's a beautiful way to put it, and I agree with that. And I think, God, I could keep going on and on.
We could. Well, we'll just have to do part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, I'll say this. I told you this when I met you.
Yeah.
I've not met a lot of people since I've been here, and I really appreciate your kindness and your inviting me to things and like getting to know you and like making a friendship with you.
It's my pleasure.
With a like-minded person has been, and it's been very sincere. It's been very genuine, and you're super fucking talented. I'm cheering you the fuck on.
Thanks, man.
I think I'm really excited to see what you go on and do and where life takes you and where life takes us as friends. And
yeah.
It's so awesome. I just know when I meet someone on, I get excited to do an episode.
Yeah,
like this was super fun and.
For some people, look, we probably, like you said, still have 3 more hours to go, so we'll just have to come back for part 2.
I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much for coming on.
That was my absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, camera. That's off.
Yeah, the camera died 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And then in closing, I will say, hey, if you made it this far, thank you so much. And get out there and milk the day. Like I like to say, go out and make a positive impact and make those little interactions throughout the day matter, because they fucking do. And that's it, guys. Peace and love. Milk the day. Peace, guys.
Thank you. Bye.